Hello and welcome to Tokyo CB and welcome back to the channel here today now guys, and this video is something quite different and something that I've actually never really done before, and what you're entering here is my first ever podcast type video. And you know, a lot of my videos are very much like podcasts in some ways. You know, it's all about the audio. You know, you don't often see me, although I have done it before on the channel, and I will be looking to do that in the future at some point too. I'm looking at doing possibly live streams, things like that. And I just thought I'd bring you these podcasts because I'm sure a lot of you saw the video yesterday. I discussed it. First of all, I'm going to bring the podcast to YouTube like this. It's a much longer format than usual, but it does give me a lot more of an opportunity to sort of discuss things in more detail, because often in my usual videos I've got, you know, not too long, not too big a window to sort of go into things in maybe as much detail as you guys like, and a lot of people do like listening to the videos and sitting down while they're doing something else and just listening to it. So that's basically what this video is for those who just like listening and want to hear some more thoughts and news basically on Barcelona. Now, I'm not expecting this video to be for everyone. You know, you might come into the channel and this podcast might not quite be for you, and that's absolutely fine. You know, if you don't enjoy the longer format of these videos, then believe me, you know, the other videos, my usual videos, will still be going on the channel. There's no doubt about that. So there's no problem at all if you don't enjoy these types of videos. The usual ones will still be continuing, but for those who do enjoy them, let's get straight on with it. And like I mentioned yesterday, guys, on the video yesterday, I do want to start uploading these podcasts on YouTube, but I would also like in the future, when the season starts, I'm going to try and do one every La Liga game week. And in terms of that, I would like to upload on YouTube, but I would also like to possibly upload on the likes of SoundCloud and possibly iTunes as well. And what I did speak about with that is my Patreon account, which is basically like a GoFundMe page, if you like. A lot of people so far, quite a few people have got involved on that, so I really appreciate all the sort of pledges, the donations from you guys. The link's always in the description if you do feel like doing it. But like I did say to a lot of people yesterday, because some people were coming to me and saying, you know, I'd like to give you something for your efforts, but I can't, I'm sorry, and that's absolutely fine. Look, I'm not asking or begging for money. That's absolutely not what it's about. You know, if you do feel like going and doing it, fantastic, I appreciate it so much. But either way, I really appreciate all your guys' support, whether you do anything or not. So let's crack on straight away with this podcast then. And what we're going to be discussing today is something that a lot of different people have come on here saying, please, 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 can we have your opinions? And that's why I've done this podcast on Neymar's sale and where we're going to spend the money. What are we going to do with 222 million euros? And that is the biggest talking point from this, because Neymar is going to leave now. There's absolutely no doubt about that. The club earlier on today confirmed that PSG will in fact come in for Neymar this summer, and he'll leave to join the Liga 1 team. And basically the big question is, what are we going to do with the money that we're going to get from PSG, his release clause, which is a world record fee? Now that's the most important thing, because I think losing Neymar is a big thing. I think losing him is something which will be difficult for us to overcome, but I think it's possible, providing that we spend this money in the right way. And that's the most important thing. We've got to, first of all, locate our targets. We've got to understand what we need in the team, and then we've got to go after them, and we've got to pay sensible fees, because even though we've got this 222 million, it doesn't mean we have to spend it all, and it certainly doesn't mean that we have to spend it all on people that we don't really need. We have to outline the targets that fit our team, because I saw a post earlier on today, and I was on Twitter, and I saw it, and it basically said that Barcelona are quite interested in signing Michael Seri from Nice, which I'll come on to specific players very shortly, but it said that we were very interested in signing him, but it said that Bartomeu wanted first of all to secure a star name. And it just made me think, we're not Real Madrid. This is not what we should be doing. We're not going after Galactico players. We're not going after big names. What we should be doing is going after the players that we really need, whether they're a big name or not. If they fit the profile, if they fit what we need in the squad, we should be signing them, whether they're a big name or not. And I just think the problem for me is the board here, because I really don't want them to get this money and use it as a technique to extend their stay at the Barcelona, you know, football club as the president and the board. Because what they could do is just go for the biggest name possible, whether he fits our system, whether he fits our needs at all. They could go for the biggest possible name simply to keep them in power, because we all know that Benedito's vote of no confidence is coming up. That's going to be happening at the start of September. He will then need Sochis to sign on it and say that they want to overthrow the current board, and he needs 16,500 Sochi signatures in order to process that vote of no confidence. confidence. If that goes ahead, then we go on to step 2, whereby you would need 2/3 of all Sochis to get together and say they no longer want the board in power. And I really hope that the board don't come now and think, right, we need to sign somebody massive simply to get people back on our side, because that's not how the club should be run. You remember when they were in power last time and they were coming up to the voting time, and what they did was, because they were in power, because the other guys, Laporta, Benedito, they weren't in power, so they couldn't do anything. But what Bartomeu did was went and signed Arda Turan for 40 million euros. At the time, it looked like a decent signing. At the time, he looked like a quality player. But by the time he actually came to play, he was in his late 20s. We'd massively overpaid for a player that we simply didn't need, that didn't fit our system. But at the time, it did help Bartomeu win the elections. And that's the biggest problem. We cannot sort of have the board trying to sign players simply for personal gain. They need to be signing the players that we actually need. So that's what I wanted today, guys, to go through the players that I feel could come into the club and make a difference, make a positive impact, and certainly ease the pain of losing Neymar this summer. And so the first point that I want to make in terms of the players that we're going to sign is that PSG are going to pay this release clause in full. They are going to pay the full 222 million euros up front, and then they get Neymar. Because a lot of big transfers, I was saying earlier on, a lot of big transfers, they're usually paid in installments. You get sort of 5 million over, a few months period, or you get 50 million in the 6th month period, and then you pay the rest the year later. Right now, PSG have to pay the full clause. That was confirmed by the club earlier on. Now, what will be interesting to see is when they pay it, because I really hope the PSG pay this clause soon. We do not want this dragging on any longer. We need to now act. We need to know that Neymar is leaving, that Neymar's gone, and we need to have the funds to be able to spend our money. What the club should have done already, though, is identify the players they want to come in. There's nothing wrong with identifying your targets so that when we do have the money, we can go and get our players. We know that agreements have been made, so we can go and get them. So the club already should have outlined players that they want to sign, that they want to bring into the club. That should have already been done in good time. Roberto Fernandes should have been working hard on his targets. He should have been discussing things with Ernesto Valverde, and together they should have come to an understanding about what we want to do in this window and how we're going to move forward. Now, at the moment, the player that does seem to be reported quite widely that we do want is Philippe Coutinho. Now, he's at Liverpool at the moment. He played yesterday when they beat Bayern Munich, annihilated them really in a pre-season friendly. Coutinho, 25 years old, we all know about him. He's a player that's been on the periphery of the sort of elite player now for a number of years. He had a very good season last season, a very consistent season. He wasn't really troubled that often by injuries last season, but before that he did have quite a few niggly injury problems, which is a little bit of a concern. He is Brazilian. Make of that what you will. A lot of things have been made recently about Brazilians and their commitment and possibly their need for wanting financial gain. I don't want to stereotype here. That's not my belief personally. I think each to their own, but I think Neymar hasn't done everybody a lot of good things by leaving in this way. So Coutinho, you could look on him with a bit of caution. Would he be loyal to us? We remain to be seen. But I think Coutinho would be an interesting signing. But the biggest problem I have with it is that he doesn't automatically fit into our system in terms of being a natural winger, and he doesn't fit into our system by being a natural centre midfielder. What he is a sort of offensive midfielder. He can play towards the left, but he's not an out-and-out winger. He's not somebody who plays in the front three an awful lot. He can do it, but the problem I have is buying players who we're then asking to adapt. Like I said earlier, we need to be buying players who are ready-made now to suit our system and to suit our philosophy. We don't really want to have to make them adapt during the season, because that's no good for anyone. We need players who are going to come in now. If you're going to pay sort of what's been rumoured for Coutinho, 100 odd million, if we're going to pay that sort of money for a player, you want them to be everything that we need. You want them to tick all the boxes. You don't want them to come and it should be then like, can you fit in? Can you sort of adapt to our style? That shouldn't really be the case. If we're going to buy somebody for that sort of money, they should be ready-made to do what we need them to do. So Coutinho for me is a possibility. I think there's no doubt about it that he has talent. He does suit the style of our play. He can suit the way that we play, but I just worry about his positioning. Would he play on the left, or would he be sort of converted into a midfield player? Because I don't think he can defensively, do well in our midfield. He would certainly be the advanced midfielder, but I'm not quite sure that he's quite used to playing in that type of role yet. Whether he could do it or not remains to be seen, but it would be, for me, quite an expensive gamble, because the problem is that Liverpool have no intention of selling him this summer. The coach Jurgen Klopp has come out on a number of occasions. He said they don't want to sell Coutinho under any circumstances, so it'll be interesting interesting to see what Barca do, because of course if we get this money, we could go head first in saying, you have 100 odd million, take it. And I don't really want us to do that. I don't want us to spend all our money at once. I don't want us to throw it away and waste it. We should be spending this as cleverly and as positively as we possibly can, looking to the future. I personally wouldn't go for Coutinho simply because of the price tag. It's going to be, for me, about 120 upwards million to sign him. I think he comes with a little bit of baggage. He's 25 years old. I'm not sure how much longer he's going to have at his peak. He could have another 4 to 5 years, but then, the amount of money you're paying, you're looking at the likes of Dembele's and Mbappe's, they've got 10 years left. Coutinho doesn't have that long, and for the amount that you'll be paying, I'm not 100% convinced on it right now. The second player that I would come on to, like I've just mentioned, is Ousmane Dembele, 20 years old, Borussia Dortmund player. He's been there for a season. He joined there from Rennes, and he had an outstanding season, really outstanding season the way that he played. He actually, at the end of the season, got into double figures, both for goals and assists, and he was really outstanding during Borussia Dortmund's campaign. He's a young player that's certainly risen to the challenge. Playing at Dortmund isn't easy. You've got a fantastic crowd every single home match, a lot of pressure on you as a young kid, and he's done phenomenally well. And I must say, if he was a natural left winger, I would say 110% we should be going out and buying him immediately, because he would be an absolutely match made in heaven replacement for Neymar. The only problem for us is that he is more naturally talented and gifted on that right hand side. He does primarily play on the right for Dortmund, which is a problem. But I still think personally, if we're going to splash 90 million, 100 million on somebody, I would make it this guy. Even though he plays on the right, he can play on the left. He has played in the left on a few occasions for Dortmund last season. Players are capable of switching wings. Whether it would work out, of course, that is the possible gamble. But I think Dembele has shown everything. I think he's shown talent, maturity, humility. I think he would come and he would certainly be very, very grounded. He would be very, very humble, because I think that's what we're looking for. We've just gotten rid of Neymar, who was a phenomenal player for us. There's absolutely no doubting that. But what the problem was with Neymar is that he was surrounded by a circus, and it's as simple as that, really. He was surrounded by an entourage, his father. There was a lot of off-the-field antics from him, going back and forth to Brazil to visit his family, parties. There was a lot of that surrounding him. We want to bring in somebody now who maybe isn't quite as high profile, but somebody who's very grounded, who's willing to work, who's committed to the club, who's going to be not cause a lot of a big nonsense, a big scene around them. I think Dembele ticks all those boxes. He's a player who's humble, who'll come. He's young, he's willing to learn. He's certainly got a lot of years left in him at the top level. He would be a great investment, and I think as well, despite the fact that he has recently come out and said that he's quite happy at Dortmund, if we made an approach for him, I think that would be seriously questioned. I think that things change very, very quickly in football, like you've seen with the Neymar deal. So I think if we went in for Dembele, then things could change very, very rapidly on his decision to possibly stay at Borussia Dortmund. But right now, as far as I know, we haven't made any approach for Dembele at all. Kylian Mbappe is my next target on the list. I've got a bit of a list down here. I asked you all to tweet me suggestions, and on Facebook as well. Let me know your suggestions for players. So thank you all very, very much for all of your suggestions. I have a big list of players to get through here. So strap yourselves in, because we're going to be here a while discussing the best options for us. But Mbappe is the next target. 18 years old. We all know about him. We all know about the hype surrounding him. Is the hype justified? I would say probably. I wouldn't say definitely, because I think one season isn't quite enough to judge somebody. But what he did last season was phenomenal. He was outstanding for Monaco last season. The way he played in their title winning campaign, but also the way that he played on the biggest stage of all, the Champions League. He was brilliant in front of goal. He has absolutely all the pressure on his shoulders, but you would never realise it. He's so cool in front of goal. And his playing style does remind me of Thierry Henry. I've said it before. He does remind me in the way that he plays of a young Thierry Henry, even though I hate those kind of comparisons. But what I would say about Mbappe, which a lot of people don't really seem to be realising, is he is actually quite a natural on the left-hand side. And he does fit our system perfectly. The only problem is he may well end up going to Real Madrid. And that is quite a big problem, admittedly. And apparently he does quite like Real Madrid. Now, if that is the case, then fine. But I think he would be an interesting option. He would be by far the most expensive player on this list, which is the biggest problem as well. He would cost, a lot of money to bring him to the club. But he's a very, very good player, and I think that's the important thing here. He does have the quality to succeed at Barcelona. You look at him from the left-hand side, he's an inside winger, so he's a player that can play wide but can also cut in, score goals, create chances. He's very good on the ball, he's very, very good in front of goal. And I just imagine Mbappe running onto Lionel Messi passes, and that sounds very nice to me. But the problem, like I say, is the fact that we may not well be his first choice. If we're not, stay away from him. I do not want anybody at this club who we're not their first choice, because I think after the whole Neymar saga, we need players who are committed, who will absolutely love wearing the shirt and will give everything on the pitch. That's what we need. So I think Mbappe is a good option, but if he doesn't want to come, don't force the issue. The next player that I would go with is, like I mentioned earlier on, Seri from Nice. 26 years old. Once again, like Mbappe, he's only really had one fantastic season, so I wouldn't be 100% convinced on him just yet, but he did have a very good season for Nice, and he's shown that already in this season that could well continue. In their qualifiers against Ajax, he put in a phenomenal performance for Nice on that day. He's a midfielder, he's a controlling player, he's somebody who can deal with being in possession of the ball, he's very, very comfortable while in possession. I think he's somebody who would certainly fit our style of play, our philosophy. He's somebody who's very, very comfortable in possession, and certainly his vision is something to be very, very proud of as well. He's a player that can certainly pick a pass and would be very, very nice in that sort of number 6 role, controlling things just in front of Busquets, running the game. I think he would be a really interesting target to go after. I think as well he's quite attainable. I think if of all the players on this list, you look at him and you think, if you threw 40, 50 million at Nice, they would not say no. And although that's a lot, 50, 40 million is a lot of money, but at this stage in the transfer market, what we've seen happen, I think he's worth that. I think he's worth the gamble, because I think he would give a lot to our team in terms of our style, and he would give us a unique option in that midfield. We don't have a controlling character in our midfield, and we desperately, desperately need one. And I think Seri would certainly be the answer to a lot of problems, because Marco Verratti, which I've heard mentioned so many times over the course of the summer, towards the start of the window, I was quite hopeful. I thought that possibly we could sign Marco Verratti. He wanted to come, but PSG simply weren't having it, and I think that's the last time we should ever show any interest in a PSG player. It's not going to happen. We shouldn't have gone for him from the start. We should have focused on other targets. We got distracted. We got roped into something with them, and we've ended up losing Neymar. So that wasn't a good episode. But what I would say is Verratti is 110% off the table. No chance of that happening. No chance of them selling him. No, they've signed Neymar. They're building a team to win the Champions League, and he is not going to be for sale. One other PSG player that I would like to mention is Angel Di Maria. Now, we've all heard a lot about him in recent weeks. Apparently, PSG were negotiating with Barça, and possibly he could be part of the deal to take Neymar to PSG. Now, that I don't think is going to happen. PSG are going to pay the full release clause, but Di Maria is possibly an option for us. Apparently, according to the likes of Sport, Mundo Deportivo, Rack 1, they all say that Di Maria is a possible alternative to Neymar. And to that I say, what absolute rubbish. Please do not go for Di Maria. 29 years old, ex-Real Madrid, shushed us at the Camp Nou when PSG took the lead in that Champions League game where we eventually came back and made him look extremely stupid. But I think that we should be nowhere near Di Maria for me. He's a player who's in his late 20s, who's inconsistent. You watch him, play with Messi for Argentina, and he does not impress you. I just think he's somebody who really shouldn't be near the club, and we shouldn't be going for somebody in their late 20s, no matter who it is. We need somebody who's young, who's talented, who's up and coming, who can become a star in years to come. Di Maria is not a player that we should be going for. We're not having a PSG reject, somebody who they want to get rid of. That's not us. We've just sold out one of our best players to them. We don't want their rubbish coming the other way. So for me, Di Maria should not be an option in this window. Then there's Paulo Dybala, of course, Juventus. We all know him. We know him very, very well, actually. He scored against us as we knocked us out of the Champions League last season. On that day, he put in an outstanding display. He looked fantastic on the ball. What I would say about Dybala is, though, number one, he didn't actually score that many goals in Serie A last season. He was actually 24th, 23rd, I think, in the Serie A top scoring charts, which is something that's actually not that quite widely known. He's not a natural sort of number 9, but the problem for us is that he did play central all season last season. There wasn't one occasion where he played out wide. And that surprises me, because a lot of people think that he'd be able to sort of slot into that, space left by Neymar on that left, but I'm not really sure that's where he's been playing the last year or so, and that could be a problem because we don't really need anyone down the middle right now. He's only 23, he's still a long way to go in his career, but he does have talent, there's no doubting that. We saw that when we played against them last season. He's shown it in the Juventus teams as well. He's very, very good and very, very handy from set-piece situations. There's no doubting his quality. But again, with Juventus there, you're going to be demanding 120 million euros at least. And that is unfortunately, ultimately, one of our biggest problems. The fact that clubs now know that we have money. They know that we've got 222 million euros burning a hole in our pocket. They know that we desperately need players in order to replace Neymar in our squad. And they know that we have the money to pay the ridiculous fees they're going to ask for. So that is a problem with having to spend the money in this transfer window. If it went on and we sort of saved the money until possibly January or the next summer, things might have calmed down a bit, but right now clubs are going to be asking astronomical figures all over the park and will either have to pay them or suffer the consequences. Somebody else who's been linked is Eden Hazard. People seem to think that he would be the natural heir to Neymar's throne on that left-hand side. He certainly fits the position. He's a left winger. He played there a lot. He very much likes to cut in on his right foot from the left-hand side, very much like Neymar used to do. So I can see the similarities there. He's extremely good on the ball. Dribbling is outstanding. He had a decent season last season for Chelsea, much better than the season before that. And the season before that one, he was also very good. So there's a little bit of inconsistency in his game, but Eden Hazard certainly does have talent. He's a little bit injury prone, which again would be a little bit of a concern for me, and I think Chelsea would be very, very difficult to deal with. Backed of course by multi-billionaire Roman Abramovich, and he is not used to selling his biggest players. They don't like selling players, Chelsea, much like PSG, Man City. They're all very, very similar in the way they don't like selling their best players. But let's face it, who does? If we went in with a big offer, who knows? But I personally right now don't see Hazard as being on our list of targets. For whatever reason, he hasn't actually been closely linked by the club, by their sources in and around Spain. They haven't really said anything about Eden Hazard of late, so I wouldn't quite go much further into that one right now. Antoine Griezmann is another one mentioned. He's been linked with us quite a few times over the years. Even when he was at Real Sociedad, we were linked with him. Atletico Madrid went on to sign him, and he has become a phenomenal player there. He has absolutely transformed his game into being an absolutely outstanding striker. And that is, again, the problem. We not really need a striker. We need a left winger. He played on the wing in his Sociedad days, but since then he's very much been a down-the-middle centre-forward. And that is, again, a problem because we need somebody who's going to come in on the left-hand side. Of course, we may well be looking at replacements for Suarez in the future, but right now Suarez is 30 years old. He's not really a player that relies on pace, so I think Suarez, as long as that finishing touch and that sharpness returns to his game, he can still keep going for another 2 or 3 years. I really do believe that. He's got the football brain. He's more than just goals, Luis Suarez. His movement is outstanding. His will to win is really refreshing. So I think in terms of a striker, we don't really need to be going down that route just yet. Griezmann himself doesn't want to leave Atletico Madrid. He has absolutely no intention of leaving them right now whilst they're under a transfer ban, because Griezmann was going to leave for Man United, but Atletico Madrid were hit with a transfer ban very, very similar to the one that we were hit with a few years ago. They can't sign any players, so Griezmann feels like now if he left, it would be disrespectful to them and their fans. So fair play to him if that is true, if he does follow through with that, fair play, because you don't really see that loyalty in the game that much anymore, particularly with what we've just seen from Neymar. So respect to Griezmann. I'm going to look at a few more midfield targets, because the interesting thing for me is the fact that people seem to think that we need to straight away go out and buy a like-for-like replacement for Neymar, when I'm not actually sure that is the case. We could well actually settle for a sort of decent left winger and instead turn all of our focus onto midfield once again. Under Pep Guardiola, our midfield play was outstanding. Xavi, Busquets, Iniesta, they ran the game in midfield. They dominated proceedings from that midfield. We still had outstanding strikers, the likes of Messi, Eto'o, Villa, Henry. There was a number of fantastic forwards throughout that time, but our midfield was the heart and core and the soul of our team. Now we could choose now to go back to that if we sort of put all our money into signing a midfielder. Thiago has been mentioned. Bringing him back from Bayern Munich would not be an easy task, but for the right fee, they could sell. You never know. What I would say about him, though, and the biggest worry, of course, you know exactly what I'm going to say, injury problems. The guy, unfortunately for him and unfortunately for his career, just cannot stay fit. I don't know what it is, but he always seems to get hit with a niggling injury. Even yesterday, I was watching the pre-season friendly against Liverpool. He had to come off with a sort of hip problem. He had a collision injury, and he just can't seem to catch a break, and it's so unfortunate because he's so talented. but he can't seem to stay fit for an entire season on end. So for that reason, paying over 100 million, which it would no doubt cost to bring him back from Bayern, would be a massive gamble, despite the extreme quality and the fantastic player that he is. Also, the fact that I don't know whether the board would consider doing a deal like that, which would make them look even worse than they already do for letting him go. Letting him go for just 25 million, the clause in his contract we all know about because he didn't play enough games. Then they'd have to buy him back for probably 4 times that and more. So it would look very, very bad on their part. Another midfielder that I've also heard has been linked with, and I can't actually believe that we're not pursuing him instead of Coutinho, and that's Christian Eriksen. And the reason for that is, a few times this summer already, he's come out and said, I wish Barca would come and sign me. Almost in those words. His words were, if Barca came in, not many players can say no. I wouldn't be able to say no. That's what he said. So clearly he wants to join the club. He would love to be a part of the club. And I think he would suit us really, really nicely. Like Coutinho, he's more an advanced midfielder. He can play on the wings, but he is more an advanced midfielder. But I think he would suit more into a midfield too than Coutinho would. I think Eriksen has more of the game to suit a midfield position at our club. I think he's phenomenal on the ball. He's got outstanding vision. He's brilliant from set pieces. He's got a fantastic first touch. And I think he's a really, really good player that we could certainly look to building in our team. He would cost, Daniel Levy of Tottenham is not an easy man to deal with, but at the right price, we've seen in the past, they do sell their best players. The likes of Gareth Bale, Luka Modric, of course. Kyle Walker's just gone to Man City, so Tottenham would sell at the right price. It would cost us, but I think at 25 years old, the experience that he's got, the qualities that he's shown in the Premier League season upon season, he's a very, very consistent player. I think he would be worth going for, and he would suit our midfield down to a T. Another player that's also been, vaguely linked is Miralem Pjanic of Juventus, a player that we were also linked with before he signed there. He went, of course, from Roma, just 30 million. What a steal that was for Juventus. He's had a great season since going there. He's made sort of the departure of Paul Pogba seamless. Juventus had another great season under Allegri. So Pjanic is certainly playing some good football. I think he'd be a good signing, but once again, you'd say that he would cost. Juve have lost a few key players themselves this summer, so they wouldn't be that keen on letting another player go. For that reason, I can't see us pursuing Pjanic when there is other options like Coutinho, Eriksen out there who could possibly be more attainable. And what I was saying about the winger situation, we could possibly go with a more low-profile left winger. Of course, you already got Delafeu at the club. He could possibly do a job there in years to come. He's certainly a player that's been growing the past few seasons. He could have a breakthrough season for us in this campaign, and he's still got a lot of years left to sort of peak and grow as a player. Another player that I'm very, very interested in, why we're absolutely nowhere near it, is Balde Keita, and he's a player who plays currently now for Lazio in the Serie A. He's 22 years old. He actually used to be part of the Barcelona academy before leaving and starting his career elsewhere. And he is available this summer for about 20 to 25 billion euros. It's a known fact. A lot of Italian clubs are interested. The likes of Juve, Napoli, Inter Milan, they all want to sign this guy, but we're nowhere near it. And I just think he's a natural left winger. He's got blistering pace. He's got a decent eye for goal. He's a strong lad. He understands the style of play that's needed to play here. He came up through the youth system, so he gets our style, he gets our philosophy. And I'm just surprised that we're not anywhere near this, because he would be a very, very cheap player to pick up. He's certainly got the talent. He came off an excellent season last season in the Serie A for Lazio. And I would just be surprised if he didn't come in. He could do a job on that left-hand side, and then we could plough all of our money into the likes of Eriksen. If you wanted to go for somebody like Thiago, if you wanted to go for Seri and Eriksen, you could do that if you wanted to, if you sort of made this little allowance on the left-hand side, because you don't always have to have 3 unbelievable forwards. It doesn't always work out that way. You look at it when we had sort of Messi via Pedro, that was an outstanding combination, and Pedro did a job. He wasn't always unbelievable, but when you needed him, he appeared, and he worked so hard for the club. He came up with key goals. He could finish chances when he got them, and that's important to have a player like that in your team. They don't always have to be star names. They just have to fit the system. They have to fit the profile, and that's what we need to be focusing on. Getting players in who can fit the philosophy, who can play the way we want to do, and can definitely carry out the wishes that Valverde wants to perform. He, in his own mind, will have targets, and I really, really hope that the board take those into consideration and we sign the players that Ernesto Valverde needs this summer. And I got a few more names here to rattle off and discuss with you guys. Like I said, I did ask for a few suggestions, and I really do appreciate all of you guys' thoughts on the players coming in, and a few players that I just want to touch on. The first one is Alexis Sanchez. Now, he has not really been linked with a return to the club, but a few people have mentioned it, and I actually the romantic side of me likes it, because I think Sanchez put his heart and soul into things when he was at the club. I never forget the goal against Atletico Madrid on the final day, the thunderous drive that beat Courtois near post. We didn't end up winning the league that day, but it was a wonderful, wonderful goal, and he did have quite a few memories. One of my favourite ever Barca goals was actually an Alexis Sanchez goal, you know the one I'm going to say, against Real Madrid. Keeper's off his line, Diego Lopez is off his line, Sanchez takes one look at him, skips between Varane and sticks it straight over him in the net. That was a magical moment that will always stay with me. But Sanchez is 28 years old, and Arsenal have no intention of selling. And the problem for them is that Sanchez is actually in his last year of his contract. He's only got 1 year left on his contract, so they either have to sell him this summer or risk letting him go for free next summer, which could possibly be an option if he's a bit bored. But the thing with Sanchez is that he's actually 28 years old now. He is sort of going into the peak of his career. You don't know how many years he's got left in him. But if we could get him for a cut price, it would certainly be an interesting deal. He knows the system, he understands the style of play, he's willing to work hard for the team. But the only problem for him, I feel, is he's sort of got a taste now of what it's like to be the main man at Arsenal, whether he want to go to another club and be the main man. But that's the problem, isn't it? If you want to be the main man at a club, you take the step down, like Sanchez did to go to Arsenal, like Neymar's done to go to PSG. But after a few years, you find that you haven't actually won the trophies that you wanted to. You find that you might be the main man. You're now a big fish in a small pond. And that's the way that it's turned out for Sanchez. That's the way that it could well turn out for Neymar. You may well be the main man, but then you might not end up fulfilling the wishes that you have in your career. So that's what you've got to be careful of. So I don't really see us re-signing Sanchez. The romantic side of me would love it, but I think, realistically speaking, he wouldn't actually be the best target to go for. Another Arsenal player we were linked with is Mesut Ozil. Don Ballon did an article saying that we wanted to sign Ozil. What I would like to say to that, guys, is do not pay any attention whatsoever to that rumour. Ozil will not be joining Barcelona this summer. That source is one of the most unreliable sources online, is what I would say about that. And Ozil has no intention of joining the club, and we have no intention of pursuing him whatsoever for our midfield. One player that I want to talk about, or two players that I want to talk about really, in Serie A right now. One of them is Torreira from Sampdoria, and the other one is Jorginho from Napoli. Both of them, I think, are extremely talented, and we have the funds actually to go out and sign both of them. Because Torreira is a player who plays for Sampdoria, 21 years old, young player, Uruguayan, and he is absolutely very talented. He's a young player, but he's just come through Sampdoria. He's had a breakthrough season. He looked so good. I've seen a lot of highlights of him. I watched him in a few games, and him on the ball and the way that he plays in that midfield really, really is impressive. Now, earlier on this summer, it was reported that he had a pretty low release clause, and it did come out just recently that he may well be renewing with Sampdoria, so we may not get him for a sort of cut price. But I still think that he would be attainable. But of course, the problem I find with the current board is they're not interested in players like this. They're not interested in the likes of Torreira. Jorginho is a stunning player for Napoli. He is unbelievable in Napoli's midfield. He completely runs the show. I watched him yesterday against Atletico Madrid in the pre-season friendly in the Audi Cup. He just looks so comfortable on the ball. He looks so at ease playing. And the problem is that the board aren't interested in players like these because, like I said earlier, they want this star name, this star signing. What's a star signing going to do for you when you're desperately crying out for a controlling midfielder? It's not going to do anything. It doesn't matter how many goals we score if we can't control games, if we can't dominate games from midfield. We have to start understanding what we need and what we want. They're two different things. We could want a team of the best players in the world, but it doesn't always work out. We've seen that year upon year at Real Madrid. They've consistently bought the best players on the market and stuck them all in one team. Only now is Florentino Perez started to use his head and sign the players that Real Madrid actually need. He's left the likes of Casemiro in the team, who may not be the prettiest player to watch, but he does what the team needs, and that's what we need to start doing. We need to stop trying to be this team that buys Galacticos, because it doesn't solve our problems. We need players who are going to suit the system and suit Valverde's style of play, and that's the point that I would like to make to you guys. So let me know your thoughts, because I'm really interested in what you've got to say. I think, this is a very big debate which will go on for a long time now. The problem is that we first of all need PSG to pay the clause. We need to get the money for Neymar, and then we need to assess exactly what we're going to do with the money we receive. Who are we going to sign? What kind of profiles do we want to pursue? Do we want to go out and buy a direct replacement for Neymar, or do we instead want to focus on getting that emphasis back on midfield? Let me know your thoughts down below. Who would you sign? I am now going to tell you who I would sign with the two 222 million, and I would tell you now that I wouldn't spend it all this summer because we're going to need money in other transfer windows. We don't want to spend all our money right here, right now, and waste it all on players that we necessarily don't need. I would sign Seri from Nice. In an ideal world, I would sign Jorginho, but they won't do it, the board. I think there's a slight chance that they could actually pursue Seri. So I'm going to go with him. I'm going to say 45 million euros for Seri. I'm going to say he's going to be our controlling midfielder. He'll come in. He'll be very, very humble. He'll be very proud to wear the Barcelona shirt. He's a Barcelona fan. He'll love it. And I think he could thrive under the pressure of playing in a team with much, let's face it, much more quality players than Nice have. And I would also sign Ousmane Dembele, simply because he could be available if we try and get him. And I think he would suit our style of play fantastically well. He does play on the right. We could either try and get him to play on the left, or we could start tinkering with our formation. You never know what could happen. You could put Messi in the middle. You could put Dembele on the right. There are options. And of course, you know, players aren't going to be around forever. Dembele's 20. He's very, very talented. He could be the star of our team for many years to come. And we need to sign him now from Dortmund before other teams start being interested in him. So if it was up to me, I would sign Seri, I would sign Dembele, and I would stick it at that. I would put the rest in a safe, and I'd guard it until the next transfer window. And then, if we need to, we can go back out in the market in January or the summer, and we could sign whatever players we wanted to need, and we could save that money and be financially sound. Because I'm tired of being in debt. I'm tired of being this club that maybe should be much, much bigger than it should have been. Neymar shouldn't have been allowed to leave. We shouldn't have got ourselves in that situation. The problem was Neymar and Neymar's dad were able to bully us into giving them the best contract, and the best contract was putting in this release clause, and we couldn't really get out of that because we couldn't afford to pay him any more money. Our wage bill was completely messed up. Now Neymar is off the wage bill. We've got rid of our second highest earner, so that's looking much more positive. If we can bring in Dembele and Seri, neither of those guys are on astronomical wages, so that will keep us nicely in line, nicely positive in terms of our wage bill, and it wouldn't cost us through the roof prices either on agents. They wouldn't bring a huge circus with them. They wouldn't have a huge entourage or a huge following. They're simply talented players who are happy to get down to business and fit what we need in our squad under Ernesto Valverde for the coming season and beyond. They could both certainly be in this team for years and years to come. So like I said, guys, leave your thoughts down below on who you would sign with the money from Neymar. I'm very, very excited to see what you thought of this general experience. Do you like the podcast? Is it something you'd like to see more of? This is a sort of special podcast. I wouldn't usually do a podcast like this for just any issue. I just feel like Neymar leaving is a very, very big deal, and we need to discuss it in more detail. So that's why I thought I'd do this video with you guys. There will be a lot more videos coming up on the channel very, very soon for you. There'll be a lot more on the course of the Neymar situation, looking to the future, looking of course to the Gampa match coming up against Capicoense, and of course then we're not too far away from the start of the new La Liga season. I'm very, very excited for that. So let me know your thoughts down below, guys, on the podcast. Any feedback at all is much appreciated. I'm still working on a few things, guys, you know, like the intro and you know, the little breaks and the music in between. I'm still looking at all the different things, and I'm trying to make it better and better for you. Like I said, I would like to in the future be able to sort of publish this podcast on possibly SoundCloud or iTunes. If you do want to support, you know, my future projects and the channel, please do go to the link down below. Patreon, I'll be very, very happy for your help there. But if not, as always, guys, I really appreciate all your kind words, all your supports, and I will look forward to seeing you in the future. Let me know down below. I'll see you very, very soon. But until then, as always, it's been a pleasure. Vesca! El Barça.